So thank you, George. Thank you, Dr. Eleftheriou. I'm just going to share my screen. So I hope that everyone sees what
Yes,
I do. Good. So everything is clear? Yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. So while Loris was talking, I was actually keeping notes. I don't know if you have, because Loris said something very important. We as advocates are actually politicians of thalassemia, or politicians specializing in the field of thalassemia. And as politicians, we need to know facts, figures, the context, to be able to promote evidence-based policies. So these are not just fancy words put together. These are actually bits and pieces of our daily lives. So I will try to give you a glimpse of what is happening in Europe and why it's important to know the context, the European context that actually helps national advocacy. So I will start by presenting the European ecosystem and how it works, how it relates to health policies, which policies are of interest for our community, the added value, of course, of national advocacy, which is actually covered and has been covered by Loris, and I have tried to gather some take-home messages. So starting from the basics, okay? This is a map of how the EU bodies work and collaborate. And it's important to understand how these work to be able to find our place as patient advocates. So in the middle, there is a triangle that is actually called the decision triangle. These are just fancy words, okay, put together. What is happening is that these three bodies that make up the triangle actually have power within the EU ecosystem. So we have the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council. And it's important to know at this stage that the European Parliament is elected directly by the European citizens, the representatives of the EU people. The Council of the European Union are actually the different ministers and heads of states working on the different legislative papers of the Union, and the Commission is the executive body of the European Union. This is important because, as you will see afterwards, we need to know our place to be able to convey messages successfully, both at the national and the European level. So it is equally important to know that there are some other fancy words like regulations, directives, decisions, opinions, and recommendations. And there is a hierarchy regarding the different documents. So when you hear regulations, we're talking about binding documents to the member states. So they are very powerful and are actually compulsory to member states. When we hear about directives, directives are more like suggestions to member states, and member states are free to decide on whether to adopt them or not. And as we go down and further down and we read about decisions and opinions and recommendations, these are not binding. These are just food for thought for the European ecosystem. And if you have a look at the circle, you will actually see that the European Council, consisting of the heads of states, actually has an agenda. So the different politicians go together, have an agenda on different issues, and then the Commission, as the executive body, takes that agenda and tries to create a program. So based on the policy program, there is a process that passes from the Commission, goes to the Parliament and the Council. And it's important to understand that because we will see and actually study what is happening now regarding the new regulation for blood at the European level. And this, once this is adopted and approved by the Parliament, it then goes to the member states and it passes to the national legislation. And then there is a monitoring procedure on whether member states have actually adopted the different documents. If it's a regulation, they have to adopt it. And we as patient advocates need to be very vigilant and see and monitor whether these have been adopted or not. So as politicians in our field, we need to actually understand how things work. So at the European level, what the Commission and what the European Union tries to do is actually identify the common challenges of the Union, of the different 27 member states. They are trying to prioritize the needs, and they develop the different work programs according to those needs. So you need to have in mind that there is a set of documents that is very useful to the European Union. And this is called the EU Cycle of Knowledge on Health. So there is a paper called Health at a Glance that you can actually consult, that actually gathers all the data you need to know. And there is a policy analysis of that data. There is there are the different country health profiles, and you need to find yours, the one of your country. There are companion reports, and of course, the different communication between the ministries of health and the European Commission. So the Commission gathers data. There is a set of criteria, the so-called indicators, that help the Commission to prioritize the needs. And according to what we actually need at different stages, there is the development of different work programs. So I will explain what I mean. So here we have a number of snapshots from the companion, the latest, the 2021 companion on health. And you will see that they actually take the different criteria and indicators, and they try to assess whether there are problems and where these problems are. So, for instance, Italy lags behind effective primary care, and this is important for our community. And at the same time, we see that Luxembourg lags behind, and that Greece at the same time excels in having multidisciplinary care available and accessible to patients. So there is a snapshot of what is happening around Europe. And things get complicated because we have to combine the different needs to the agendas of the member states and the mission letter of the commissioner. So when Mrs. Stella Kyriakidis took over and became the European Commissioner for Health, she actually received a mission letter stating that she has a number of priorities and things to achieve. So there was a combination, and now we are working towards a European Health Union because nothing can be actually be addressed or solved if each member state works on their own. So we see that after different crises, there are changes in the health agenda. In the 1990s, after the mad cow disease, health was included for the first time in the EU agenda. And now with the pandemic, we're working towards the European Health Union. So these are just different milestones of the health policies. Now that Mrs. Kyriakidis received her mission letter, she then actually instructed her team at the Commission to create a work program. And now the current health program for the period 2021-2027 is called EU for Health, that has a specific set of objectives. So improving the health in the Union, protecting people from serious cross-border threats to health, and of course, improving access to medicines and strengthening health systems. So Mrs. Kyriakidis, of course, has at her disposal an amount, a considerable budget to reach her goals. And this is actually the list of priorities, of the current priorities of the Commission. So you will see at the right side, number one is the cancer fight that has started and will continue, that also concerns our community. We have the cross-border health and a number of other priorities, including access to medicines, and of course, the revision of different EU health legislation that we need to know about. So if we take that list of priorities, there is a number of policies that we need to have in mind when talking about EU health policies. So cross-border healthcare concerns everyone, medicines and access to medicines, cross-border health threats, and organs, blood, tissues, and cells. So I will try to outline the different topics that are of interest to us that we need to know and advocate and participate in the different advocacy activities. So regarding patient rights in cross-border healthcare, I know that it is very common, and you all need to know that if you receive care in any EU member state, this is actually reimbursed by the home country. And when you travel, always reach out to national authorities and always have an updated, renewed European health insurance card with you. This is very important because even if you travel and there is an emergency and you need to have a transfusion at any hospital in Europe, you need to know that you can go and visit the hospital with having your health insurance card with you. So it's important to know and spread the word. Other than that, there is an issue regarding traveling, visiting centers of excellence, and receiving care at the center of excellence in the context of a treatment. So this problem was actually raised by gene therapy at the time, because we as patients needed to have access to center of excellence to receive care. And this part was not included in the specific directive that provides for cross-border healthcare. And this part needs to be added, and the whole directive of 2011 needs to be revisited. So this is something we're monitoring here at TIF, because a consultation is expected to come up in 2023. So regarding medicines and medical devices, there are different types of medicines. Besides the medicines we know, we have medicinal products for pediatric use, orphan medicines, traditional herbal medicines, and vaccines. And just, let's say, just to know what orphan means, because not all of us are Greek speaking. At the time, when the first medicines came up for rare diseases in the States, the different pharmacies were actually trying to put them on a shelf in their pharmacies. And they didn't know where to put them, because these were meant to be used for rare diseases, and there was no actual shelf to put them at. And they just said, okay, this will be left aside. So the word orphan came up. These are medicines for rare diseases, orphan medicines. So this is just some encyclopedic knowledge for today. So EU policies in the area of medicines cover clinical trials, cover medicines and the production of medicines, and of course the use of medical devices. For us, the politicians of the field of thalassemia, we need to have in mind that there is a regulation, remember the very strong document on clinical trials that is binding on the different member states. It has just started to be implemented. So 2022, if you see at the diagram below, it has been put into practice, and the portal, the EU portal on clinical trials, has been published. So for any patient wishing to participate in a clinical trial on any medicine that focuses on thalassemia treatment and management and improvement of the life of patient, you need to know that everything now is centralized and that you can have access to the portal and have a look at what is happening around Europe. So since the clinical trials regulation is mandatory for member states, this is actually very useful because we can have an overview of what is happening and participate and have access first to the different innovations, okay? So let's now see what is happening at the regulatory body. So as the regulator of the different medicines in Europe, the body that approves the safety and efficacy and efficiency of medicines, the European Medicines Agency is very structured in their way of work. And there is even a whole pipeline for patients to be involved in the different procedures. So there are different public summaries of opinion, the package leaflets, safety communications, consultations with the industry with regard to the safety of different drugs. And as you will see with the red arrow, we can participate as patients in the Patients and Consumers Working Party, which we do as TIF. And Lily is here with us to share her experience afterwards. And of course, Loris is with us to share his experience with the COMP committee working on the orphan medicinal products. So we are advised, we provide our expert views, and actually our views are sought by the EMA. So we need to be informed, be experts, and be in position to actually provide useful feedback and constructive feedback to the European Medicines Agency. So you will hear one of the fancy words of our decades is the pharmaceutical strategy for Europe. So this is once again a case of fancy words put together. It's nothing but a set of 4 objectives. And out of the 4 that you see on the slide, I choose to highlight that the European Union targets access to medicine for patients, okay? And that the general pharmaceutical legislation that provides for access to medicine has been revised, and a consultation, a public consultation, will be open in early 2023. So we need to have in mind that, because both as individuals and as associations. And please mute your microphone. So regarding now the SOHO regulation.
Please just hold for a second. Can everybody please mute their speakers, please?
Thank you, George.
Thank you, Eleni.
Thank you so much. I'm very
George,
conscious of time, so
yes,
I just...
Eleni, if you can skip to the blood tissues and cells, because we only have another 7 minutes for the meeting.
Excellent.
It's important to focus on that a little bit more.
I'm actually finishing, so we're right on time. So here is the blood tissues and cell part. We know and we have read on the TIF news on Facebook and on the website that that a new regulation on standards of quality and safety has just been released, and this document has actually incorporated suggestions of TIF, such as the centralized supervision of the different blood establishments and a more coordinated effort at the national level with regards to the different levels of blood and the practices of blood storage and the different logistics. So this is a very important document for our community and for Europe, because it actually addresses the different blood shortages reported in certain countries. So at this time, we're waiting for the European Parliament and the Council to approve the document, and it is in your hands to actually advocate for its approval, because remember, European Parliament, representatives of the EU people, the Council, heads of state, so this is national advocacy. And this takes me to Okay, to this map, it's a map, it's the example of ATMPs. It's a selection of documents, of different policy documents. And I just want to show you that it's very complicated and the whole system is complex and you cannot understand and read in depth all the different directives, both at the European and the national level. You need to know, though, their existence and you need to know their strength. So when you see directive, you know, now you know, and when you see regulation, you know that it's binding on the member states. So advocacy starts from there, and advocacy starts from patients that are in the center at all times and in all policies. And of course, I know that you have seen this again in different interventions of mine through the years, but I cannot stress enough the importance of national advocacy because change starts there. And here, this is just a map showing you that you can actually be involved in EU advocacy and the formation of different policies. And I will be glad to discuss this afterwards with you. And I thank you for your attention and patience.